Hey viewers, my name's Kara. I'm your host for Tuesdays on the Pagan Perspective, and this week we're talking about prophetic versus, or kind of prophetic and inspired writings. This will be a direct upload because I don't have hours and hours today to record and edit and render and upload this, so I've changed the settings so I can just upload it directly when I get to the library before I have to go to rehearsal. So today, this week, we are talking about, oh my gosh, now my phone's going to be in this, everything. Okay. This week, we're talking about prophetic and inspired writings. The topic was sent in by Cody. It will be in the description of this video as always. And Cody asks us to talk about our opinion on prophetic or inspired writings, recognizing that they are not necessarily the same thing, although sometimes books that are published as one or the other involve both. So just talking about our opinions of that, and one of the specific examples that they gave, I'm getting more messages, I'm turning my phone on to vibrate. One of the specific examples was Liber Legis, which I probably totally mispronounced. It's the Book of the Law of Thelema. So I just spent the last hour or so reading some different articles online about different inspired writings and about the Book of the Law. So I kind of have developed just some general opinions on it, and I've also been thinking for the past couple of weeks just about what I feel the difference is between prophetic and inspired writing and how I feel about them in general before I then looked into this specific text, which I have not read in its entirety. I've only read samples of it from articles discussing it. So I guess I'll start with what I feel the difference is. To me, when I hear those two words, prophetic versus inspired, prophetic writings to me are those that are claimed to be written through connection with a deity or some kind of spirit. But moreover, the word prophetic makes me think that it's prophesying something, that it's specifically a communicated message that is prophesying that something is going to happen. You know, when you think of a prophet, it's someone who gets messages about what's going to happen in the future, you know, what the outcome of the battle is going to be, when the next child is going to be born to this family. These are the things that I think of when I think of prophecies, and maybe that's because I read a lot of fairy tales and myths and folklore, I don't know. But that's what I think of, and so I also think of the prophets of the biblical sense of being the people who kind of were the messengers of God. So to me, that all falls under prophetic. And then when I think of inspired writings or inspired anything, when I think of inspiration, it does also come from spirit, which can also be a deity. That's where the word comes from, inspiration. It has to do with spirit as the root. And that's also where we get respiration, breathing. Breath is of spirit as well. So there's a lot of fun stuff you can get into when you look into the roots of words like that and the word inspiration. So there is an element of that it's inspired by deity, spirit, something like that, or a muse. One of the other things Cody said we could talk about is just ramble about the idea of the muse and the idea of inspiration. So there's an element of that, but I also think of just being inspired by other people's work, being inspired by different things. So I feel that you can be inspired by your connection with a deity or spirit, or your work with spirit, and take that inspiration and do something with it. You can be inspired to create something out of that relationship, but that's not exactly the same as directly transposing a message, and that's kind of more in a prophetic sense. I'm not sure if everyone will comprehend that difference as I see it, but that's how I view them differently. I do see a lot of overlap. And I guess my general opinion of this kind of thing is that I take them all on an individual basis, and I take it all with a grain of salt. I do believe that deity speaks to different people in different ways, and that because we are different people, because we come from different lenses, that the same deity form saying something to me would sound different to me than it would to anyone else, because it's coming to me, you know, and it has to be whatever way the universe knows that I will receive that message. So for me, I get a lot of messages from the written word. It might be something I see in a book, in an article, stuff like that. Other people receive messages very visually. They might have a vision in a meditation. Sometimes that happens to me too. That's just not the number one way that I receive messages. But for other people, that's the main way. They're very visual, image-based people. Other people receive messages auditorially. They actually hear. And when I say that I've heard a message or that I've received a message, it is often coming in the form of thoughts, fully formed thoughts popping into my head that were not consciously my thoughts. Now this gets into the next thing where people talk about the book of the law and not really being sure what it really is. So Aleister Crowley claims that it was dictated through a spirit and through the gods and through spirit, and that he was just writing it down. Other people kind of argue whether it's really coming from deity or spirit, or whether it's coming from somewhere deep within your subconscious. So that is two different things that we can think about. And that is something that I don't feel bad saying I don't know. I don't have the absolute answer to that. So that's something that I feel like is part of the taking it with a grain of salt thing. And I think as long as we are approaching these things knowing that we can't really know for sure, especially if you haven't experienced it personally, how can you really say what's going on? So I think we can look at all these things as teachings and yeah, take it with a grain of salt, take it by an individual case-by-case basis. Just because you might really feel that one thing is absolutely a message from spirit that has been channeled through this person as the vessel, it doesn't mean that you have to automatically believe that every other thing that is claimed to be done in the same way, that they are all equally resonant or equally true in your mind. You know, there might be some things that you feel better about and other things that you're not so sure about. So I'm very much in that camp. It's on a case-by-case basis for me. And the reason that that is the case for me is that I do experience some things like that. People have heard me talk about I receive messages, but I don't consider myself a spirit communicator at all. I do not consider myself someone who is able to contact the spirit of someone else's deceased relative and deliver a message for them. I can't look at you and say, this is from your great uncle David, and he said this. I know people who can do that. That's mediumship. That's a different type of thing than what I mean when I say I've received a message. But I also just receive general inspiration. Like, I get ideas from things that I feel are messages from spirit, but they're not direct, they're not quotes. It's just kind of a feeling that I get. Versus when I do a reading, for example, and I come up to a card and the lessons of the cards are, coming through, that's from the cards. I've been talking about tarot a lot recently because I just posted on my personal channel. I did the 10 questions every tarot reader must answer. So I've been doing that a lot and doing a lot of readings. I actually have one to do later today after rehearsal. But there are some times that a message itself comes through from the card. For example, my fairy ring oracle depicts characters. I'll just grab the top one from the pile. It's sitting right here. So the first character happens to be Tamlin. And I would talk about what that card means and what it means within the spread, but then I might also get a direct inspired message from Tamlin saying, and then I quote it to the person. So sometimes that happens when I do readings, and it's very much, it's something that I understand. It's in English, obviously. I don't think every spirit in the world speaks a specific language. What I'm trying to say is that it's kind of like the TARDIS, that it translates everything for you. So I do believe that when I receive messages, it is in a way that I can understand it. When you receive a message, it would be in a way that you can understand it. So I feel that some of the criticism about the Book of the Law with Aleister Crowley, that it sounds too much like his other readings to truly be from spirit, so therefore it must be from somewhere within his subconscious. I feel like that's not necessarily an argument for or against it. It's just another thing to keep in mind, that I believe that Spirit speaks to us in a certain way. And if Spirit had decided to tell his wife Rose to do it, Rose may have written things down differently than how he did, because it depends on the lens that it's coming through. Like I said, that's not really an argument for or against prophetic or inspired writings. It's just something to keep in mind, because I feel like in some ways it can be a credit to it, and in other ways it's another reason that you would disbelieve it. So just take it with a grain of salt, take it case by case, as I said numerous times. So that's kind of where all my thoughts lie about this kind of thing. It's not something that I overall believe that's never true. It's not something that I always believe it's always true. It depends. It just depends on the situation, and I definitely have a personal connection with it, because I do experience little tidbits of receiving messages through when I work with different characters and archetypes. Like if I'm talking about the leprechaun card in my oracle deck, and I'm talking about, well, these are the lessons of the leprechaun, and these are the lessons that I know of through the leprechaun, but then all of a sudden, if I get something else coming to me, then I'm like, oh, I wasn't thinking that, so I don't think that's my thought, that's coming from this archetype that I've just connected with. Then I'll say, the message that I'm receiving from this is, or from him, or what. I don't like to gender the fae beings that I communicate with just because of how they're depicted in the cards. So sometimes I say him, sometimes I say her, but I don't necessarily believe that they're gendered like that. There can be others. So yeah, it just depends. Or I'll say, you know, this character is saying this, and I actually put it in quotes, and when I do that, that means that it's not coming from me. I'm getting a phone call from someone that I have to answer for the play that I'm doing right now, so it's time to end this video anyway. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, don't forget to be awesome, blessed be, and goodbye.